Hello friends, this is Badal and you are watching my channel BP Tutorials. Today we shall be talking about a poem that falls in class 9 Cbse syllabus. This is A Legend of Northland. And before we begin the poem, I shall be talking a little about the poem in detail. See, this poem actually is a ballad. What is a ballad? A ballad is a poem or a song narrating a story in short stanzas. Traditional ballads are typically unknown, authorship having been passed on orally from one generation to the next. And this particular poem, when we read it, when we understand the meaning in put in there, we get to know that a legend of the Northland, this particular poem, actually qualifies the form ballad. It tells us a short story in short stanzas, and this has not been at all a story which is authenticated. It had been in the oral folklores and all, and it came into existence in this way. And this is even called as a didactic poem. What is a didactic poem? A didactic poem is a poem where the primary intention of didactic art is not to entertain. In the poem, we shall not find any intention to entertain, but to teach the audience a moral or a theme. Examples. Suppose much children's literature, religious literature, parables, fables. These are a sort of poem which deals in didactic teaching, a moral teaching. Well, as we go through this particular poem, we get to know the term legend. What is a legend actually? A legend is called a traditional story, sometimes popularly regarded as historical but not authenticated. And that is the reason it even qualifies as a ballad. Well, then it is going to be what? It's a traditional story, and this is popularly regarded as historical, but it is not authenticated. There is no authentication is done, and we shall get to see that this particular poem, A Legend of Northland, connects the place Northland. What is that? You'll find various thoughts about it, but this talks about purely the highlands of Scotland, which is referred as Northland. Some kind information. This is Scotland and the Highlands of Scotland, which is actually in United Kingdom. We are going to have a talk about of a story of this particular place here. Let us begin line by line analysis of the poem A Legend of Northland. Before we begin, we must check out the basic aspect of this particular poem. Legend of Northland is actually a didactic poem. We got to know this one. And you see, the first, before we read, this affirms this particular statement. The poem narrates the legend of an old lady who angered Saint Peter because of her greed. Really, this teaches us that getting greedy will lead to downfall, and we should not become a greedy person. Well, before we get into the poem, let us check out the rhyme scheme that runs in the poem. What is that? Rhyme scheme is actually A, B, C, B. And let us check it out. So Northland A, few, B, winter, C, and through, B. Reindeer A, snows, B, cubs, C, clothes, B. So this is what the rhyme scheme that runs in the poem. Let us go through the meanings of the line. See, away in the Northland. What is Northland? We already talked and we got to see the map even. Northland is actually the Scottish Highlands, the hilly areas of Scotland which falls in UK, United Kingdom. Away in Northland, where the hours of the day are few, it indicates that far away, somewhere in Northland, the hours, that means the duration of particular day Duration of the days are very few. That means the length of the day is very less. And of course, contrary, it is said that, and the nights are so long in winter, and we get to the specification of the time here. Which season is it talking about? It talks about the winter time. According to the poet, this particular poem is in Northland, and we get to know that hours in the day it is very much less, and nights are very big, and it is happening in winter season that they cannot sleep them through. The nights are so big, so lengthy that it is impossible for you to sleep. It is impossible for them to sleep. And we get to know here the reference of day. As you can see, what does it mean by day? Day actually refers to the people of the area. People living over there, they cannot sleep through the night of the winter over there. Let us go to the stanza 2, where they harness the swift reindeer. And we should know that they actually live in a place which is filled with extreme biting cold, and there is snowfall, excessive snowfall, and because of that they had lots of difficulties in case of leading their life. So they do what? To ease their life, they use swift reindeers which can move in a very swift manner. And these reindeers are used for actually for their communication. You see, they harness. What is it? What is it? Harness meaning is put over here. You can see here harness. What is harness? A set of straps fitting by which a horse or other draught animal is fastened to a cart, plow, etc., and is controlled by its driver. This is the picture of a harness actually. This is used for strapping the animal. And the reindeer is this one. The reindeer we were talking in that particular stanza, this is the reindeer. So reindeers are used because they are what? Swift. They can move very fast, and that is why reindeers are used for their communication. How do they use that? To the sledges. To the sledges, reindeers are harnessed to the sledges, and when do they do this one particularly? They do it when it snows. So take a look at once the sledge. As you can see in the picture, this is the sledge actually. The sledge, a vehicle which is pulled by reindeers, and the reindeers are actually harnessed with the sledge, and then they are made to pull the sledges, and this way they do all sort of communications for carrying things or carrying people or whatever you require to do. And children, the two aspects we find here. First of all, we got to know the reindeers and the sledges and movement. And now the children look like bears' cubs. Children, they actually look like the cub of a bear in their funny furry clothes. Why do they look like a bear? Because they are putting on furry clothes, and the furry clothes are funny, and they look like what we call as bear. Actually, this particular thing is quite common where there is excessive snowfall, where people wrap themselves up in very furry clothes, and the children look like bear cubs for that. They tell them a curious story. They tell them a curious story. That means they refers to the people of that particular area, tells to the other people of the area about a curious story. What is curious? Curious here, it means strange story. A story which is a strange one, not at all common story which we hear here and there. I don't believe it is true. According to the poet, it is not true. Poet doesn't believe it to be true. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Doesn't matter whether the story is true or false, but you be sure about one thing. You are going to learn a tale from this tale. T-A-L-E, tale means story. From this story, you're going to learn a lesson for sure. That is being told here by the poet. Let us move to the next stanza. Once when, now the story gets specific actually. Once when the good Saint Peter, who is the Saint Peter actually? There is a reference you can see here. First of all, this is one of the pictures that is available of Saint Peter. Saint Peter, uh, it is not authenticated how he looks, but there is a painting over here. Who is Saint Peter actually? Saint Peter, also known as Simon Peter, was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ and the first leader of the early church. According to the Christian tradition, Peter was crucified in Rome under Emperor Nero. So he had the similar kind of death as of Christ. So let us know what he does over here in this story. Once, when good Saint Peter lived in the world below, that means when he was really present in this particular world and living a life, doing his activities, and walked about it, and he moved around the world. Why? Preaching. What is preaching? Preaching has got a religious connection. Here it goes the meaning. Take a look at it. The delivery of a sermon or religious address to an assembled group of people, typically in church. So it is said that preaching is a religious lecture that is given to the people for their benefit. Just as he did, he did this particular work very well. He did this in various parts of the world, moving, walking. He told people about Christianity, about the way one should go towards Christianity and all of the things. He did the preaching on this. And then what happens? He came to the door of a cottage. Now, while moving about the world preaching, he came to the door of a cottage. Doesn't know whose cottage it is, but he came to the door of a cottage. In traveling around the earth, he traveled here and there around the earth, and then he came to the cottage door, where a little woman was making cakes. In that particular cottage, there was a little woman, and the little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. So the woman was doing what? She was making cakes and she was baking them on the hearth. What is a hearth? Hearth is called the floor of a fireplace. Actually, this floor of a fireplace is used for baking. You can see here in the picture the floor of a fireplace, which is used for baking here cakes. Now then what happens? And being faint with fasting. Actually, there Saint Peter had not eaten for the whole day, and that's why he was faint. Faint in the sense here, one who is weak or feeble is called faint. Now, being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done. Why? Because the day was almost over. It was about to be evening right now. Whole day he walked and preached, and he was hungry. He did not get food to eat. He asked her. Saint Peter asked that little woman who was baking cake from her store of cakes to give him a single one. He just requested that particular woman who was making cakes on the hearth and requested her to give him one cake just out of her store of cakes. One woman could show this sort of generosity easily to a saint like Saint Peter. So she made a very little cake. This indicates that she is very much selfish. You should not become selfish at all. She was very selfish. She was making a very little cake. But as it baking lay, as she laid it for baking actually on the hearth floor, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. And she felt that the cake that she laid for baking on the hearth floor, it was so big and it was impossible for her to give it away. She felt so possessive, so self-centered, so me, I, mine worked in her that she went and grew selfish, and she did not want to give away this particular small cake that she prepared to cake for Saint Peter. Next stanza, what we get to see. Therefore, she needed another. What is needed? You see, work It is basically with washing flour and clay. Work into dough or paste with the hands. Actually, she again started to make a dough so that there would be another cake prepared. And of course, her intention was not to make a bigger one here. She wanted to make a smaller than the previous one, which was even a smaller one. Now, therefore, she needed another and still a smaller one. Still, she made a smaller cake, but it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. And when she actually looked at it, she found, and when she turned it over, she found that it was as large as she had done the first one. So the cake that she thought to make a little smaller one actually turned out to be a bigger one. And that was most selfish act she had been doing over there. Then she did what? Then she took a tiny scrap of dough, very little tiny scrap of dough she took and rolled it flat, and she rolled and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer. What is a wafer? Wafer is a thin, light, crisp biscuit, especially one of a kind eaten with ice cream. Here, the cake is like a wafer, so thin, so light that it showed the extremity of her selfish attitude and begged it thin as a wafer, but she could not part with that. She could not part with that. She could not give it away to Saint Peter. She could not leave it and give it to Saint Peter for eating. This much selfish she had been. For she said, my cakes that seem too small, when I eat of them myself, and yet too large to give away. So she put them on the shelf. Try to understand what she did. Her mentality is very clear over here. She tells, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself. When she eats her cake herself, she finds her cake to be small. But when this is the question of giving away, it seems to be yet too large, very large it seems when she gives away the cake. And that's why what she did, she put them on her shelf without giving to Saint Peter. Then good Saint Peter grew angry. He was already very much weak, hungry, and when he got to see this kind of selfish attitude from that particular woman, he got more angry. I mean, it was quite natural. He was going to become angry. For he was hungry and faint. Because he was hungry and he was very weak. He was faint, he was weak, and because of that he went very angry. And surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. It was really selfish behavior of such a woman. It was enough to provoke a saint to be angry. This was quite enough reason for Saint Peter to get angry. And he said, what he said? And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form. According to Saint Peter, the woman was not anymore fit for having a grand human body because she was very, very much selfish in nature. And being so selfish, one is not going to be given the preference of staying in a human body. And what he did to have, why she should not be in human body, to have both food and shelter. To have both food and shelter, she was not fit for a human body. And fire to keep you warm. So according to Saint Peter, she was so selfish that she should not be in a human form for both food and shelter, and even for the fire to warm her body. It was not fit that she should stay there. Now you shall build as the birds do. There was a curse. Here goes the curse actually. There is the curse of Saint Peter on the woman. Saint Peter tells that you shall build as the birds do. You have to build everything as the birds do. And shall get your scanty food. What is scanty? Small or insufficient quantity or amount. She'll never get food in abundance. She'll get food in scanty amount. So it was cursed by Saint Peter by boring and boring and boring all day in hard dry youth. And how would she procure food? It will not be easy for her at all to procure food in a very easy way. She will have to do the boring and boring work of searching food in the dry food, and then she would get food. Of course, that is going to be scanty food. Then up she went through the chimney, and then, as the curse was pronounced, the curse had effect, and she went up through the chimney. What is a chimney? The fire is the smoking unit which takes the smoke out, and through that particular chimney she went through, never speaking a word, and she did not speak a word. And out of the top flew a woodpecker, and she was turned into a woodpecker bird. Out through the chimney piece, she went up and she turned out to be a woodpecker bird. And what happened? For she was changed to a bird. And why did this happen? Because she was changed to a bird by the curse of Saint Peter. She had a scarlet cap on her head. Take a look at the point here. As she moved up through the chimney, and that time she had a scarlet cap on her head. What is scarlet cap? It's a red color, bright red color cap actually. Bright red color cap is called scarlet cap. Here it is, the picture you can see. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same. She turned out to be a woodpecker while she went through the chimney, but there was a cap still intact on her head, although she was a bird now. But all the rest of her clothes were burned, black as a coal in the flame. All other clothes that she had been putting on, as she went through the chimney, her all other clothes got burned, and those turned out to be black as a coal. And every country schoolboy, here country means village, every village schoolboy has seen her in the wood. Every village schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, according to the poet, where they carry this particular, according to this particular ballad, the woman who was cursed, she still dwells in the forest as a woodpecker bird, and every schoolboy has seen her in the wood where she lives in the trees till this very day. She lives over there, boring and boring for food, and she does the work of this searching for food in a boring manner. And this curse is a lesson to you: do not become selfish at all, do not be self-centered. Your thought should not be I, me, mine. Your thought should be something of holistic about people, everybody. Be kind, sympathetic. This is what is being taught here. You should not be selfish. Be some sympathetic. Be philanthropic. This is what it should become. Not like the woman here in this particular poem. Anyway, this is the end of the analysis. If you would like to the comment, please do it. Any question, I will try to answer those. And if you want any particular video to be made by me, please write down there in the comment box. I shall surely try to make